What is Catholic Inc.? The first thing we should clarify is, what does the Inc. part stand for? Inc. is a short form for incorporated, which refers to a type of business infrastructure. If you have ever started a business, it is likely that at some point you had to make the decision to incorporate, which is to say you formulated your enterprise in an official way so that you could do business and deal with the realities of regulation and taxes. Business is a part of society, and the church is a society. Thus, we must assume that within the Catholic world, both in the church and adjacent to the church, there are businesses that rely on the Catholic faith. There is nothing wrong with a business operating with a persona that is heavily influenced by or reliant on Catholicism. There are plenty of Catholic businesses that market themselves as such, and they do excellent work and provide a service to the faithful. We might think of Catholic publishers, gift manufacturers, or educational institutions who ethically balance the needs and desires of the Catholic consumer, while at the same time satisfying the laws of commerce in order to make enough money to keep the lights on and pay employees. As we dive into this idea of Catholic Inc., I hope that none of my viewers will confuse what I am saying as a condemnation of any sort of quote-unquote professional Catholicism. It is simply a fact that we live in a world where things cost money and mortgages need to be paid. So, if you are a Catholic and you want to help the church and the faithful, then you have to figure out a way to do it while also feeding your family. I am sure all those who spend their time and money to make good content or products for the Catholic laity will have had experiences with malcontents who lament the fact that everything Catholic isn't free. No doubt you have seen the comments from these types of cantankerous freeloaders who bellyache in comment sections saying things like, "Why should I pay for this catechism? I will just find a PDF. This is just a grift." Or, "I'm not going to pay for a subscription when I can just find the information for free." While I sympathize with the idea that it is often preferable to find something for free, it is also the case that free things are often a lower quality and harder to access. Sure, you can find free audiobooks, but if you want your audiobooks to actually be enjoyable to listen to, then you're going to have to fork out a few shekels so the sound is processed and the annoying clicks and breath sounds are removed. As a professional narrator, I can tell you that if you listen to a 10-hour book with excellent sound quality, that the narrator spent at least 30 hours making it, maybe more. That means that the audiobook you listen to on your way to work is worth a week of wages for someone who made it. There is nothing wrong with paying for that, especially if you want Catholic products to thrive in the world of consumers. You should want this, as you should want more people to hear Catholic things. That said, since there is money involved in the life of a professional Catholic or professional Catholic organization, that means there is also the risk that the evils and dangers that come along with the pursuit of money will be present. Catholics are not immune to this, any more than Judas was immune to it when he sold Christ for a few bucks. It is not true that money is the root of all evil, but it is true that the love of money, the unscrupulous pursuit of mana, is a good way to damn your soul. Again, you are fooling yourself if you think Catholics are immune from this. Catholic mainstream. Within the Catholic Church, there exists a professional mainstream, which is to say a loosely organized consensus amongst a variety of professional Catholic personalities and influencers. The mainstream includes everyone from priests to bishops to theologians, YouTubers, speakers, publishers, etc. Baked into the Catholic cake is a rightly ordered sentiment of obedience to the hierarchy, as this is how the Church was set up. However, we also know from church history that the hierarchy can be corrupted, both morally and doctrinally. Thus, obedience to the hierarchy must be tempered with other virtues. This presents a problem for professional Catholics, who understandably require the support of bishops and official institutions to run their Catholic Inc. organizations. As an example, if you are a Catholic book publisher operating in a diocese that is run by a modernist bishop, what are the odds that he is going to give the stamp of approval to your endeavor to start making beautiful Latin Mass missals? What are the odds that Bishop so-and-so is going to support your outfit by getting the richest donors in the diocese to fund your startup? This means that Catholic businesses who want to be successful have to necessarily be involved in the world of church politics, which is a dangerous and thankless game. Everything in the church is political these days. This includes publishing, broadcasting, hosting conferences, and even canonizations. Want your favorite modernist with dodgy miracles to be called blessed? With a marketing plan, a media team, and enough donations to an annual appeal? You can make this happen. All of this requires money. Christ said that with enough faith, we could move mountains. It is also true that with enough money, you can move enough dung heaps to one spot and call it a mountain and name it servant of God. Furthermore, Things can be even more difficult when an organization is a Catholic group with a nonprofit status. You started your business as a Catholic organization, and your former bishop was cool with that. But good old what's-his-name comes to town and says people like you are too rigid and that you can't use the name Catholic unless you become a liberal. The financial implications of this can be crippling. To make matters more complicated, since business is a part of Catholicism, businessmen are also a part of Catholicism. Like all types of men, businessmen can be ethical and they can be serpents. At this time in church history, it is the serpents who reign. Thus, those who rise to the top of Catholic Inc. often have to be as wise as a viper and innocent as the mongoose who bites its neck. In addition, if you want to run a Catholic media outlet, let's say, you are going to need some money. And if you want to run an outlet that looks as good as the godless outlets of the internet, you are going to need a lot of money. I can tell you that starting a Catholic podcast is not an easy way to make $1 million. So if you want to do something like that, then you are faced with some hard choices. You can take the long and arduous path by making a mildly successful living by staying independent and uncontrolled by church politics, or you can do things differently. If you want to ensure that you have the cash, then you are going to need more than patrons and ads. You are going to need some cold, hard cash. This means you have to go to the people or organizations who have the cash. Again, this does not mean that it is unethical to do so, and it does not mean that all those with cash are unethical. I am saying nothing of the sort. But it cannot be denied that the governance of the church is doctrinally weak at the moment, and the muddled financial nature of church politics is often more conspiratorial than an Alex Jones fantasy. No matter who you approach for money, or who approaches you wanting to give you money, you will be beholden to those people. And the more money they fork out, the more control they have. Sure, in the beginning, things might seem all simpatico. A rich businessman came to your aid and gave you that 20 grand you needed to get things set up. And by all accounts, he is an ethical man with an orthodox faith. But he is also a regular Catholic, which means he might think that the papal magisterium of airplane interviews is binding on all Catholics. So, under Benedict, he was all too happy to fund your next project. But when Francis started decrying Catholics breeding like rabbits, suddenly he was worried about donating to someone who was too conservative. What will you do? Will you say no to the money, or will you justify to yourself that there are other things you can do with your platform, and it isn't that big of a deal? The moment you do that, you bend the knee to mana, and if you want to see how that turns out, read the Bible. It doesn't work out well for anyone. As I said, Catholic Inc. is not an official organization or enterprise, but more a group of well-known Catholic influencers who, for whatever reason, have found themselves in the upper echelons of the world of Catholic influencers. This means that all those involved in Catholic Inc. have undoubtedly been faced with the moral conundrum at one point or another about whether they should follow their conscience or follow the money. Have you ever wondered why your favorite Catholic podcaster or author was happy to dip his pinky toe into tradition for a while, only to unceremoniously rip it out of the rigid waters of the Council of Trent, to turn around and call you a schismatic? Follow the money. As an aside, do not for a second think that this paradigm only applies to the palatable and charitable outlets. Catholic Inc. has no problem playing nice with the brutish bunch that does not play nice with others, as long as the mission to fund Catholic Inc. continues. This is no different than the Bible-believing politician who attends your pro-life gala and also passes legislation to make sure that local casino thrives, the one with the whorehouse. Follow the money. The traditionalist problem. Until just a few years ago, there wasn't really a way to make a living as a professional Catholic without being a part of Catholic Inc. If you wanted to get a spot on the conference speaker circuit, then you had to have the hat tip from some older Catholic layman or prelate who either had the money or had a way of controlling whether you got the money. But with the rise of the traditional movement and the simultaneous decline of boomer Catholicism, also known as the spirit of Vatican II, things have radically changed. Taylor Marshall showed that a dad with a webcam could reach more people than EWTN with 1/zillionth of the budget and move more books than Ascension Press. I should say about Taylor, he is a friend of mine and a good man, and I would battle for him gladly. Other Catholics that I respect who don't bend the knee to Catholic Inc. include John Henry Weston and Steve Jelsevec at LifeSite News. I have never met men more committed to the truth and so uncommitted to compromising the truth in order to kiss the ring of a modernist with a fat wallet. There are others like these men, and they deserve mention. Matt Gaspers, Michael Matt, Brian McCall, Tim Flanders, Eric Salmon, Terry and Jesse, and others who I may be forgetting. They have all forged paths into the breach without breaching their moral compass. Okay, fine. Anthony and Rob. Avoiding Babylon isn't bad either. Neither are Enoch and Elijah. I thought about including that guy who likes to wear fedoras, but he suffers from schism Tourette's. Every time the SSPX is mentioned, he can't help himself. Speaking of fedoras, Mike Church and Charles Coulombe are legends in their own right. This might sound like a call to unite the trads, but it's more like unite the chads. You see, for Catholic Inc., traditionalism has become a problem, a big problem. It wasn't too long ago that Catholic Inc. could ignore the trads, but not any longer. The Reverent Novus Ordo paradigm is on life support, much like many of the few elderly parishioners who are left. This means that Big Catholic now has to work harder to keep the bread buttered, which means they need the youth to buy in. But there's a big problem. The youth have looked at what Catholic Inc. has to offer and they have found it wanting, which is why they are leaving the hermeneutic of continuity for the continuity of Marcel Lefebvre. Take a look at the numbers. Do a little internet research and look at the engagement and view counts of the Catholic Inc. platforms and then compare them to those with a fraction of the resources and little to no support from the hierarchy. Often we find that there is as much or more engagement online with the independent voices, and if we consider how much money has to be spent on behalf of Catholic Inc. to compete with Gigatrad Catholicism, it is clear what direction things are headed. The dad in his webcam is pulling in more views, selling more subscriptions, and moving more books with no staff, no angel investor, and no one who can tell him what to do. This terrifies Catholic Inc. Some of them tried to wade into the wild west of independent Catholicism, but it was inauthentic and everyone knew it, so they swiftly got out of Dodge. Rather than heeding the advice of the old maxim, if you can't beat them, join them, Catholic Inc. has resorted to, if you can't beat them, call them schismatics. Please don't confuse my meaning to include the many good people who work in Catholic Inc. There are plenty who stay in their lane, sticking to what they know best, whether that be biblical studies, church history, or Catholic education. But the who's who just can't seem to stay in their lane, probably because that lane is starting to fill with trads. They need the rabble-rousers of Trad Inc. to fail, but they can't contend with our theology and influence, so now they seek to ostracize us like lepers. They are so inspired by a desire for unity that they have to make sure they are in charge of who is in and who is out concerning the church. Sorry, fellas, it's not going to work. Now, you might ask why I've leveled this salvo against Catholic Inc. Wouldn't it be better to work with more Catholics, even if compromised, in order to fight for the church? Scripture tells us the following about Gideon's battle in Judges chapter 7. Quote, "And when the people were come down to the waters, the Lord said to Gideon, They that shall lap the water with their tongues, as dogs are wont to lap, thou shalt set apart by themselves. But they that shall drink bowing down their knees shall be on the other side. And the number of them that had lapped water, casting it with the hand to their mouth, was 300 men, and all the rest of the multitude had drunk kneeling." Although the enemy is great, we do better to operate with an army that is fighting trim, rather than go to battle with the multitudes who kneel down like subservient animals.